With MyCounselor.Online, and today I get to interview Shaun Lotter about his amazing article, How to Talk to Your Son About Pornography. Shaun, thank you so much for meeting with me today to talk about this article.
Cassie, I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so I'm a mom of little boys, preteen boys, and you're a dad of young boys, similar ages. Our boys are buddies. So getting to read this article before my boys hit the preteen years, or right at the preteen years, was so encouraging to me, and I can't wait to get this video out there for more accessibility, for parents to just find encouragement in this topic that so often feels completely overwhelming, completely frightening and terrifying. We as adults we can wrap our brains a little bit around the gravity of what pornography use over time and in certain ways can mean for our children's future and for our own lives. But to have these tools now, these practical tools in this article, is going to be a game changer. So thank you for writing this article, and let's jump into it.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right, so the first thing I noticed was that this article is primarily written about boys. So of course there are going to be young ladies that are also viewing pornography. But I get the feeling there's a difference. Is there a difference in males and females pornography uses? Talking about, children and teenagers. And would you go about that differently with a daughter than a son, or similar?
Well, first off, the question that I would want to speak to is how different is it? I think traditionally it's been very different in terms of how boys and girls interact with explicit sexual material. But what we're noticing over time with the proliferation, if I can say that right, of sexual content everywhere, that line is getting more and more blurred. I'm seeing more young ladies who are being exposed to explicit material and are forming pornography habits that has been, traditionally more male dominated in that. And so I think we are going to unfortunately continue to see that trend. Would be what I would anticipate in that. And so the way that I would go about it differently, or what I would modify with young ladies, is first of all, probably we're going to have mom taking the lead rather than dad.
Okay,
so
that makes
role
sense.
reversal, just like we said with young men. He's guiding her into manhood. I'm a strong believer that a mom's role is to guide her daughters into womanhood.
Sure.
And there are unique challenges for boys stepping into that role and what it means to be sexual that a father needs to relate to. And I think for girls, there's a unique perspective that moms have on what it means to be a woman and to have a sexual part of your life and have that integrated. How do I deal with that? What are the challenges there for women in particular? Because they are different than men.
A little different.
They are different in that. And so what I would suggest, again, is mom taking the lead. And the second thing I would say is the time limitations probably go out the window. Girls talk more. They just do. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so a girl is going to be a lot more probably willing to have conversation, explore, kind of let that wander around and talk through those things. Whereas boys, I mentioned, boys are typically much more mission oriented. Communication. And so lots and lots of words and lots of time are not going to be helpful.
They're not your allies in talking with your boys about it.
They're not. You're going to want to be doing something. You're going to want to be building fires as you're talking. You're going to want to be doing those kinds of things. Whereas your girl, moms are going to sit across with some tea, and we're going to discuss
Yeah.
this and
Yeah.
what it means. And so those would be some primary differences that I see. I want boys to get to a place where they can enjoy that they're sexual and the assertive pursuit role that is masculine in nature. And I want girls to be in a place where they can really see the beauty and steward well the allure of and beauty of being feminine.
Yeah.
In that, and not feel like that is their only asset, and also to understand how precious and valuable that is, that God has made that as a part of who they are.
Yes.
And they're not just an object, because again, we know that pornography, heard a quote by a pastor once. He said, it's not what pornography shows that is the most damaging, it's what it leaves out. And so we have all of this sex and all of this provocative stuff, and we have none of the substance of who people are and what it means to be a whole person. We have none of the commitment and the growing and the refining together. So we really want to encourage our kids with a complete picture of what it means to be male, female, what it means to be sexual as a man, what it means to be sexual as a woman.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. It comes at the topic from a completely different vantage point, from a completely different goal, because we're not trying to shut down their sexuality. We're trying to steward it well towards the blessing God has for them within. That's amazing. And in your article, you talk about how parents, when they find their child looking at pornography, they often jump to one of two extremes. Talk about those two extremes that you see parents jumping to.
Yeah, the first of those is more of a secular humanistic kind of extreme, and it is this idea that exploration, it's at least partly correct. Exploration or curiosity would be normal, but it's an exploration and a curiosity that's unguided. And so there's no direction to it. It's just that the child is curious, and this is just a thing that kids do, that they need to go through. And what it does in that is it sets a child up to have arousal, sexual arousal, be their compass. In discovering what it means to be sexual. And your sexual arousal is a biological response. It's not a moral compass. It's not a place that can give you direction. Simply experiencing arousal and curiosity are not things that are meant to be a guide to us.
But they are normal.
But they are normal in that. So that would be on one end, parents who are very hands-off, or just kind of, my kids are going to find their way, and kids will be kids, and they'll figure it out eventually. The other is probably more common in the church, and because we're more aware of the issue of pornography, we get absolutely terrified when our kids encounter sexual content. And so it goes something like, oh my gosh, my child is now permanently damaged, beyond repair. What do we do? Or in the more extreme sense, I can have a parent who, because of their own feelings of guilt and failure, looks at the kid and says, oh my gosh, we didn't teach you to be like this. How could you do this? Why would you think that it was okay to do this? I can't believe you. And either one of those stances really conveys to a kid that I can't take this to my parent. They're not a place where I can receive any kind of meaningful guidance or direction. In the case of the latter, it really conveys that mentality that God didn't make your sexuality. He's kind of disgusted by sexuality.
And that's big. Those things are
that's really,
big.
really important, because then we get into, especially for Christian boys, and I would say for Christian girls, I think there can be this idea that you don't get to enjoy your sexuality. The only people who get to enjoy their sexuality are people who are not following God, because they don't have those boundaries. And so those boys get to enjoy being masculine, and those girls get to enjoy being feminine. And so I really, it's sad when we give our young people in the church no outlet to have a healthy, strong enjoyment of what it means to be sexual in that.
Yeah.
So they're left in a position where a lot of times they're trying their best to shut down the sexual component of themselves until they get married. And
Right. We
then
know
I
how
get
that
to be
works.
sexual.
Real
Yeah,
good.
and we know how well that works. It doesn't work usually very well for most young people. It's pretty
Yeah.
discouraging, pretty frustrating, and it's just not a whole picture of who God's made them to be.
Absolutely. That's so good. I appreciate you bringing both the practical and the theological,
Mm-hmm.
and just a great understanding of who we are created to be as sexual beings, from that time that, from infancy, but as it really turns on in the preteen years and the
Mm-hmm.
young teenage years, and figuring out that whole piece. Why did God give this to me? What am I supposed to do with it in a healthy way that honors who God really made us and our children to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you talk about, which I never thought about it like this, but that this is the first time that often boys, their interaction with their sexuality, and in this case pornography, is the first time they've had to deal with their own sin nature in an ongoing way.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's really critical for parents, especially parents in the church, to understand. Something that we take for granted as adults, if we do understand it or we've dealt with it, and a lot of times I have adults who really haven't dealt with it in their own lives, which is our sin nature and the difficulty of that and the struggle with that. And I mentioned in there, I think it's important for parents to think that for the majority of this child's life up until this point, sin has been a very simple thing. I know what to do. I know what I should do. I know what I shouldn't do. And there's not a tremendous amount. I'm not saying there's no temptation, but there's not a ton of temptation there.
Sure, it's
different
level.
Yeah, different levels. So if a kid, cheats on his homework or, steals something from the store, they get caught, they feel terrible. They don't ever want to do it again.
Yes.
And they move on. And there's no real lingering struggle there. But, enter in our sex drive.
Yeah.
This part of life that God has made us, that he's blessed us with. And so for the first time, kids are in a position where they're dealing with, I looked at porn, I regret that, Lord, forgive me, help me with that. And really meaning that, really feeling a sense of regret about that. But then, let's say within a week, because our sex drives are pretty constant, hormones and the ebb and flow, we get a week or 2 weeks down the road, and all of a sudden, the kid inside is just struggling with wanting to look again.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? What do I do with the fact that I have something that I know is wrong, but I still feel tempted to do? And oftentimes, I think the enemy delights in this, as kids come to the wrong conclusion, which is something along the lines of, if I really meant what I said when I said, God, forgive me, then I wouldn't be tempted by this. Or, if I prayed about this and God didn't take this struggle away, then what does that mean about God? And it really is kind of an incomplete, wrong picture of what it means to be a person. Because this will not, I want to be clear, this will not be the last sin struggle that they have. There will be.
But I can't help but think of it, even as an adult, in our own sin struggles with this, that, or the other. Like, these are huge concepts, but they're truth. And if, we have such an opportunity to help our children understand the nature of sin and the nature of our God in walking us through that.
Right. So we have a chance to explain to them the wonderful ways in which God has made us, and to also understand and recognize the hand of the enemy. That, the Bible is clear. It never anywhere gives us an idea that he has the capacity to create. He only has the capacity to corrupt. And so what he does is he takes those good things which God has made and attempts to distort and corrupt them. And so for us as believers, that's important. We don't want, our goal is not to pray for God to take away the good that he has made in us and the good that he's done. It's to be able to lean on him and also lean on others as we do this walk together. I would add to, not only is it their first struggle with sin, but it's probably the first time that they're going to have to really have a lifestyle of leaning on not only God, but others in the church. They probably have not had to deal with issues like their own weakness, their own struggles, their need for others, their need for ongoing encouragement. That they are with this. And so it's far from being a bad thing. It can be a really, really helpful thing as they start learning to live a lifestyle of really utilizing the body of Christ.
Yeah.
To really lean on others. You know, I mentioned in that article by the end, I hope that dads take a stance of, son, this is a heavy burden and you're not meant to bear it on your own.
Yeah.
Not only is this a real sin struggle, but it's not something that God set out and said, and by the way, you're on your own.
Yeah. He does not do that.
We're gonna do together.
Yes.
We're gonna encourage one another. We're going to walk through this together. I'm gonna help you. And there may be others, other young men in your life, son, that you're going to be an encouragement to.
Yes, absolutely.
So we really want to have that lifestyle as a church that we're encouraging to one another as we wrestle with this.
And to be able to talk about it openly in a safe context and with the right framework for it. So good. So let's get really practical. In your article, you go through a talk, which I if you are watching this video, you must go to the article. You must read it in its entirety because it's phenomenal. And as a mom, I just kept walking through it and being like, yeah, that's right on. That's where we need to be. That's what we need to be saying and the heart we need to have about it. So I just loved it so much. But I want to get really practical without doing the line by line of the talk. But let's talk about, you catch your child looking at porn. Okay, what is the response that you can have that's going to it's going to help you guys move forward most effectively? Because we talked about the two extremes. We want to avoid those. So first.
Yeah, so what I would recommend that parents do, and you're going to want to think about what the response of your child is. I talk a little bit about just the nature and the character of the child.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to speak to is a kid that already has a sensitive heart, has their own walk with the Lord, and feels guilt and shame about this. Yeah. And so what I would want to do as a parent, if I catch this, I'm going to restrain my shock. If I can, I'm not going to let my
poker face.
That's right. We're going to have a little bit of a poker face. If they're there and they're on the computer or whatever it is, I'm going to go over. I'm going to shut that off. I'm going to pull them aside and say, okay, I see that you've done this. I want you to know I want to help you with this.
Yeah. I
love you. Your mother and I, your father and I love you very much. And this is a real thing. What you've been looking at on the computer is a struggle that a lot of kids find their way into in that. And kind of follow your kid's lead. If you have a real sensitive kid, he may cry and you need to hold him. If you have a kid, he may start spilling his guts a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I want to do as a parent is I just want to be gently curious. I tell married couples all the time, if you can have a stance of gentle, compassionate curiosity with your spouse, that'll go a long way. So what I want to do is the same thing with my kid. I'm just going to be gently curious and just whatever they want to tell me. And rather than reacting to it and going into interrogation mode, as a parent, and drilling them with 50 questions, I'm just going to listen and just say, okay. So, and I might be just, asking gentle questions about what it is they're telling me and encouraging them. I'm so glad, you're sharing this with me. It sounds like it's been really, really hard.
Yeah.
And what I would suggest that parents do, think about your own sin struggles and God's lavish love and grace upon you,
Patience,
and his patience,
compassion.
his compassion. I mean, we're beneficiaries of that. And so I want to be someone that, as I've received that from God, I pass that on to my child in that moment. What I would not do, again, is go into interrogation mode, or look at them, look shocked, and say, we will talk about this later, and kinds of things. I want to come alongside my child, spend some time. If they don't want to talk, what I'm going to focus on is reassuring them that I love them. Yeah. We're going to deal with this. We want to help. Your father, your mother, and I really want to help you with this. This is a struggle that a lot of people have.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest takeaways from the talk was this is not about controlling our children. This is not about placing them in a safe environment so that they never, it's not a quick fix. It's about being their advocate and coming alongside them and nurturing them and shepherding them and helping them understand God in this context, and helping them understand their self and sin and our relationship to God and his power and his compassion in our lives. And, it just really changed my framework around this whole subject, from being like, not that it doesn't hold true gravity, because it truly does, but that it's an opportunity for coming alongside our child and teaching them the things that we want them to take into adulthood that are so valuable for them as adults.
Following that initial interaction, then we go into, if you need to go freak out to your friend,
yes,
do it. Privately, go call your girlfriend, go call, oh my gosh, I did well, I showed up well, but I am freaked out.
That's so good.
A response that I would have, or that I feel a lot of times, is anger.
Yeah.
I get angry at the enemy. I get angry that people are so deceived and following in his stead, that they put stumbling blocks out there. I had a mom in my office not long ago, and her daughter ran across pornography when she was researching a well-known child's book. And somehow there was a link, and it just, I just told her, I said, I just feel so angry with you as a, not with her, but I feel angry alongside you as a parent that this is put out there. Just so frustrating. And so we want to get that out of our system a little bit, give ourselves a chance to talk to our friends, talk with our spouse, so that we can come back later, set a time to sit down with your child, make sure the other kids are out of the area. They're not there.
You don't want to be interrupted.
Don't want to be interrupted in that. If your kid is more anxious in temperament, you're going to want to do that more quickly, because having that conversation looming for them is like not a good thing.
Yeah, too heavy.
You know your kid. If you have a kid that's a little more laid back and they're okay, like we do it tomorrow, whatever, they're not gonna be totally overwhelmed, then that's fine. But just kind of be sensitive. You know your kid. What they tend to do, how they tend to handle stress, and so just be thoughtful. That'll help you with the timing of it.
Yeah. So basically the idea of the talk is, it's a private talk. Mom and dad can both be present, but eventually dad needs to take the lead.
That's right. Or mom with girls.
Yes. Okay. And then secondly, you say to empathize with your child and validate them. This has been so hard. I know this has been a struggle. We love you. We're glad we found this out so we can come alongside you and help you. All those things. And then number 3, to put together a plan of action, like you talked earlier about building campfires together. Hey, we're going to plug the leaks. We're going to make sure that this isn't a temptation easily by allowing it in our home via whatever, however they've been getting access to it. Plug the leaks there, and then set up a time for regular interaction and communication about the issue.
Yeah.
On that note, I wanted to read this quote from your article. It just struck me as a mom. It says, content of the talk, this is for boys, bite-sized, We are not covering everything in one marathon talk. If you want to train your boy to cringe and hide from you every time you have a concerned look on your face,
Mm-hmm.
ambush him with long conversations. I was like, any other moms out there ever done
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Think of one or two small things or bites you are looking to accomplish in this discussion. He can only really take a piece at a time, and overloading him only serves to alleviate your anxiety, and then it leads to frustration because he checks out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought there's like so much practical application in there, and I could
Wow.
not specifically mention that because, yes, as women and mothers, we're so concerned for our babies, and it just, not that the fathers aren't, but it's different. They speak man, like
Yeah.
we're women, we speak women. So I just thought that was good and pointing out.
And just remember that it also kind of that ability, how much your son or is going to be able to take in is also affected. We're able to take in less the more strong emotion we feel. That's how we work. That's why when we're in crisis or something like that, we don't learn real well. It takes us hearing things multiple times because we're either really scared or we're really sad or hurt or whatever it is. And so usually he's feeling a tremendous amount of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And so what that does, to people, most people, and your son included, is going to be that lessens even what he's able to absorb, because that shame and that guilt, especially initially, is going to be really loud for him. And so over time, that'll get quieter as you're able to have those discussions, but especially in the first time or two.
Yes.
Just remember what it's like when you feel really anxious or you feel really sad or whatever it is. That there's a limit to what you can hear. You can hear a little bit, but you can receive a lot of comfort and encouragement. So I want to shape my conversation accordingly, knowing that that's what I need when I'm in that situation. So that's probably what my kid needs. I can give him a little bit, we can talk a little bit, and I need to layer that with a lot of encouragement and sensitivity.
Yeah, that's really good. I was challenged on the piece of, we want it to be an easy fix. We want to have this conversation one time and then it's fine. We're asking for it to be easy for us when we know it's going to be a struggle for them. And so I felt so challenged by that. And so I was glad to have that put out there for consideration before jumping into this issue. And what would you say, to wrap up this interview, what would you say to a parent that has already been walking this road with their child, but not well, who has found their son or daughter looking at porn, freaked out, went to one of the extremes, and, is there hope for them? Is there hope for that?
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm so encouraged by, and I learned this working not only with kids, but with adults, is as a parent, it never stops being very, very powerful for you to go to your children and own when you've messed up.
Yeah.
And that's so encouraging to me as a parent, because I know that I have messed up and I will mess up again.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes parents come in and say, I'm so terrified of messing up. And I say, listen, I want you to be sensitive. I want you to be wise and thoughtful about what you do, but understand there is no point at which going to your kids and saying, hey, I want you to know what I did there. I want you to know why that wasn't okay. I got to own that. There is no point at which that won't be very impacting to you. I even sit with people in their 50s and 60s whose parents are still alive.
Yeah.
And grandma in the nursing home, if she ever does something like that, where she says, when I used to say that to you, that really hurt you as a child.
Yeah.
And they're talking about things from when they were little.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. So I just want to encourage parents with that there's no point at which you owning that, you turning around and coming back and say, hey, I didn't get that right. It's powerful to your kid. It's also a great teaching moment for them, because they see your humility. They see how you handle it when you mess up. And that's an invaluable thing to them moving forward in life, because as wonderful as your kids are, they're going to make mistakes too.
Yes.
And so it conveys to them, well, if I do make a mistake, here's how I can handle that. Here's how I can handle that with humility and kindness, because I saw mom do it or I saw dad do it. And so there's not a point at which you need to get down and say, well, I've just totally blown it.
Yeah.
Get back up, realize that that can have just a really powerful impact on your kids.
Yeah, that's so good. This whole article, this whole interview has been so good. And if you're watching this, make sure you go read the article at MyCounselor.Online. Shaun has a host of other great articles there. And Shaun, thanks for meeting with me today and for talking about this article.